Hi, thank you for stopping by. My name is Natalie. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease at the beginning of the pandemic called lupus. It changed everything about my life forever. On this channel, I talk about staying healthy, living well, and living green. I drop a video every Monday, so you can go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you're into this kind of content. The third stage. This is called bargaining. So this is a part where you start kind of negotiating with yourself about how to make this work. You start saying things to yourself like, maybe if I do this, then the lupus can go away. Maybe if I can do that, the lupus can go away. Maybe if I try this, I won't have lupus anymore. This is a stage when people try all sorts of different things just to avoid having to deal with the reality that this lupus is like here to stay. The stage right here can make you feel very insecure, very desperate, very afraid and anxious. There's a lot of shame that comes with that desperation, a lot of guilt about not being able to handle it and not being able to cope emotionally with what's happening. And for some people, they're almost like looking for someone or something to blame. So there's a lot of like obsessing about, maybe if I hadn't done this, maybe I wouldn't have lupus. Maybe if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have lupus. So there's a lot of like going back and forth with yourself about how you got to be here. At this stage, what happens is, unfortunately, your thinking brain is no longer in the driver's seat, is no longer in charge, and the feelings take over. So we're still kind of coming off of the anger, so the feelings are still in charge. And there's a lot of overthinking about past and the future. There's a lot of like overthinking about everything, picking every little thing apart, worrying about the future, just comparing yourself to other people and feeling like you're being left behind, not being very hopeful about the future, just expecting the worst. It's almost like you feel like now that this has happened, your life is over. At this stage, for a lot of people too, they like kick up their perfectionistic like attitudes or habits, thinking that maybe if they're the perfect lupus patient, then they're gonna be fine, they're gonna be able to get rid of it, and it's not gonna be a problem in their life anymore. Like, maybe if I did this perfectly, maybe if I eat just right, maybe if I exercise every day, maybe if I go see my doctor when I'm supposed to regularly, maybe if I do all these things perfectly, then I won't have lupus anymore. And for a lot of people, unfortunately, it turns negative, and it's more like negative towards themselves. A lot of criticism towards themselves, and also criticism towards the other people in their life, because everybody else's life is still going on as normal. Nobody's life has shifted or changed. It's only your life that seems to be like upside down, but everybody else is like minding their business. And for a lot of people who need emotional support but don't know how to ask for it, that can really take that very hard. They can interpret that as people don't care about them, people don't love them, when really it's that they have to like deal with themselves and the feelings that they have about the disease, and it doesn't have anything to do with the other people. We're still getting deeper into the feelings, right? So at first we acted like we didn't care, then we were angry, then we were negotiating with ourselves to see how to avoid being in this situation and to avoid feeling these feelings. And then eventually we move on to depression, which is stage 4. And this stage is very necessary because that is a stage when we get real, when shit gets real, and when we got to really look at ourselves in the mirror and accept the reality, the new reality, which is that, yes, I have this diagnosis. It is for life. There is nothing I can do to make it go away. And this is something I'm always gonna be dealing with. That's the reality of the situation, and it's not an easy place to get to. And even when you do get there, it's not a happy place to be. It's quite sad. The depression stage can look like feeling helpless, feeling desperate, feeling hopeless, feeling sad, feeling disappointed, and all of these negative emotions can literally leave you feeling just overwhelmed and just like zapped out, because there's like nothing good in the tank. You know what I mean? There's nothing good there. There's a lot of intense emotions, but none of them are uplifting you or encouraging you. They're all are just tearing you down, just to shreds. For a lot of people at this stage is when they start like having issues with their sleep, or having issues with their appetite. It's like if they didn't used to eat a lot, now they're eating all the time. If they didn't used to struggle with sleep, now they can only sleep for a couple hours at a time and have a hard time falling back asleep. Some people isolate from their friends and their family because they're like in this dark hole where they feel like very hopeless and they don't want people to see them that way. Or they're in this hole where they feel hopeless and they just don't want to come out of it. Sometimes it's about not wanting to be seen as weak, but sometimes it's also about just being content by themselves in the space. A lot of lack of energy, a lot of lack of motivation, a lot of lack of pleasure and joy, a lot of crying mainly, just a lot of sadness and a lot of crying. And overall being lethargic, and just not feeling excited or motivated or good about anything, just feeling like you're at the end of the road, even though you aren't. That's really what it feels like, almost like a part of you has died. And that's a really hard place to be in, especially for an extended period of time. This stage can take quite a while, and I think it's very normal. I encourage everybody to give themselves permission to feel those feelings, because it's not easy, but it's necessary. You can't heal if you don't grieve. You have to be able to grieve. You have to be able to accept your new reality and to mourn the old life. And that takes courage. Eventually, if you're lucky and if you work at it, you can transition from the depression to the last stage, which is acceptance. In this stage, you accept the new reality, which is, I have lupus, I have an autoimmune disease that does not have a cure, but I'm not dead, and this is not the end of my life. I can make this work. There's a lot of wisdom that you get once you get to the acceptance, because you've gone through the depression, you've gone through the sadness and the tears and the crying and the overthinking. You get to a point where you realize it is what it is, but not it is what it is and I'm blowing it off and I don't care, like denial, but it is what it is. Like, I know what I'm looking at, and I know I don't have a way out of this, and I know there's nothing I can do to change this, but let me see how I can work with this, let me see what I can do with this. In this stage, you give yourself a lot of compassion, a lot of patience, a lot of understanding, because you understand this is a new thing. This is not anything you asked for. This was just thrown at you, and you just got to figure it out. And that's going to take some time. And it's okay if you make a couple of mistakes, and you will. And it's okay if you do really well in some other areas, and you will. It's a journey. It's a lifelong journey. It's going to take a lot of learning and unlearning to get to a point where we feel comfortable with how we're living our life with our new diagnosis. The good thing about getting to this stage, though, is that it can make you feel very strong. It can make you feel very bold, and it can make you feel almost like proud that you are able to get through all of that difficulty and all of that pain. And you were able to find yourself on the other side of that pain, still alive, still grinding, still surviving, still enjoying your life, and still resuming making plans for the future and being optimistic. It doesn't mean that you're like jumping up for joy, like, yeah, I have lupus, because let me tell you, I have never felt that way one single day since I've gotten my diagnosis. I can now say that having lupus has actually made me a better person. I am kind of grateful for the transformation, honestly. I know it sounds weird, and it's okay if you're not there with me. I don't expect anybody to feel what I feel, but these are my feelings. Now I'm grateful for the transformation. Now I'm grateful for the experience. The life I lived before lupus was very unbalanced. It was very like go, and it was very doing a million things at once. And now I have to self-monitor a little more. I cannot just be go, because my body would tell me, no, chick, you need to sit down. No, we need to lay down. No, we need to take a nap. No, we're not supposed to eat that. Let's eat this, So I feel like it makes me more honest and more like real, because I have to stay true to what I know, which is that because of this condition, there's certain things I can't do anymore. My life is different now, and that's okay, because it's better. It's different, but it's better. That's kind of what acceptance looks like for me. Again, it doesn't have to look that way for you, but essentially it's getting to a point where you know this is a part of your life and you deal with it accordingly. without blame or without fears, like, or without like being overly critical of yourself or other people. It is what it is, and you do what you have to do. Now, when you're dealing with a chronic stressor like lupus or any type of chronic loss, like an issue that is not going to be quickly resolved, it's not unusual for anybody to go from acceptance all the way back to anger, or even all the way back to denial. Like, it's okay if things go up and down. It doesn't have to be a linear process. Like, I do this stage and this stage and this stage. It doesn't have to be that way. Some days I have great days where I'm like, yes, acceptance. And then other days when things come up that remind me of, my limitations now, there's sadness that come with it. I don't yet know what it's like to live with lupus without a pandemic. So a lot of my lupus experience has been wrapped up in the grief of the pandemic. So they're both just kind of wrapped up together, and it's okay to feel all your feelings. And it's okay if they're not all happy all the time. Sometimes I get sad about it. Sometimes I get worried about it. Sometimes I'm okay with it. Sometimes I'm optimistic and strong, and sometimes I'm not. And all of that is okay. It's not an easy thing to live with an autoimmune illness or disease, especially one that doesn't have a cure. So we have to be patient with ourselves and give ourselves really the room to deal with it in the best way that we can. The way that I deal with it doesn't have to be the way you deal with it, and vice versa. It's really about being present in your own life, doing the best that you can given your circumstances, and making the very best decisions that uplift you, making the best decisions that strengthen you, that are going to be for your very best outcome, which is well-being. For a lot of people living with a chronic illness, grief can function as a second chronic illness in and of itself, because, it is a constant part of having the disease. The grief is like the cousin or the brother or sister to the disease. So you're dealing with the disease itself, you're dealing with the grief associated with the illness, and then unfortunately for us that are living through this pandemic, we're also dealing with the grief from the pandemic. So this is definitely a very difficult time for a lot of people, myself included. And I just want to say we're doing really, really tough things right now. Those of us who are living with a chronic illness, and in case you needed that reminder, it's important to take that time sometimes to just appreciate your strength, appreciate your persistence, appreciate your emotional strength, because it takes a lot of strength, emotional strength, to be able to ride those waves up and down and still be able to find your even kill position and be able to function here and allow yourself room to ride the waves again until you find your footing. A lot of people are afraid of that dance. That's why they run away from it. But if you're doing that kind of work and you're out there, you're surviving, you're thriving, you're doing what you need to do for yourself or your family, your loved ones, kudos to you. Give yourself some credit. Take the time that you need to get yourself together. Don't be so hard on yourself. Be patient with yourself and just take it day by day, because this is going to be a lifelong thing. So it's not like we're going to have it figured out today, So do the best that you can for today and leave the rest for tomorrow. What about you? What was that grief process like going through lupus? Was it similar to anything that I described? Leave your comments in the box below. If you like this video, give it the thumbs up. Remember, I drop videos every Mondays on health, wellness, and green living. If you like this content, hit the subscribe button. If you want to shop any of my sustainable fashion pieces, you can do so at styledunder.com. And you can follow me on social media at styledunder25. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.